Okay, good morning. I wanted to go over today a sample analysis FRQ and particularly hone in on the rubric and how you might want to attack it. So this is one that one of my classes wrote last week. It's from 2016. Again, the analysis FRQ is question 2, so here we go. On June 11th, 2004, Margaret Thatcher, the former PM of Great Britain, delivered the following eulogy to the American people of honor of former United States President Ronald Reagan, with whom she had worked closely. Read the eulogy carefully. Then, in a well-developed essay, analyze the rhetorical strategies that Thatcher uses to convey her message. So the first thing I would do is sort of hone in on what the prompt is asking. Okay, the prompt is asking her message. Okay, so it's a eulogy, so you can put it in context. She's commemorating what a great person Ronald Reagan was, okay, and she was his friend, and she worked together with him in politics and international relations as the Prime Minister of Great Britain. I would read through it quickly, and the timeline that I like to use is maybe 7 minutes for the analysis. And as I'm going through the passage, I'm looking for diction types, syntax types, looking to link those to the message, and then figure out what is the message. And then I'm also looking for tropes. Okay, so this is an analysis essay. If she uses argument strategies, by all means, I will expand my repertoire to include those as well. So this passage goes on a little bit over a page, which is a bit long for a typical FRQ, but sometimes they do. But the beauty of this one is it's wrote so recently, and it was presented so recently, it's very accessible. Okay, so as I read through it, I noticed that there was a lot of parallelism, abstract diction, examples, and anecdotes. So I'm going to list those as my 3 predominant strategies, and I will put those in my thesis. I also noticed that her overall message is that Ronald Reagan was a resilient, good-humored, patriotic, influential president and friend. Okay, so basically I would say Margaret Thatcher conveys former President Ronald Reagan as a resilient, good-humored, patriotic, influential president and friend through her use of parallelism, abstract diction, and powerful examples and anecdotes. If I can't think of a hook, I'll probably just leave space for it at the top. But here I have one, and I basically say, President Reagan stood fast against the Soviets in the Cold War, and he was the best man for when that same Cold War finally thawed. So I'm sort of using the metaphor of the Cold War and extending it and talking about how it thawed. And that also ties in with my shift. I like to tell my students, look for the holy shift. Okay, it's kind of a cheesy joke. But in a passage of this length, it's not always going to be the same message. It's not always going to be the same tone. It's not always going to be the same mood. So you want to look for when that mood, tone, or message shifts. And it does so around here when she talks about the fall of the Soviet Union. And then she says, and when a man of goodwill did emerge from the ruins, President Reagan stepped forward to shake his hand and to offer sincere cooperation. Okay, so that was a shift in the Cold War and a shift in the passage, because earlier in the passage has sort of a different tone or mood. Even right here, she's talking about how he took a hard line against the Moscow's evil empire, etc., which is a highly connotative word choice. So there I have a hook, a thesis, I have 3 predominant strategies, and I have identified where I see a shift in the passage. So those are all ingredients for me to write a high-performing or high-scoring essay. As far as the rubric is concerned, okay, Remember, there's 1 point for the thesis. I like to say, make sure it's clear, make sure it's easily found in your first paragraph, maybe the last sentence or two, and link the 3 predominant strategies to the prompt. So whatever the prompt asks. Sometimes the prompt asks for your mind state, or the mind state or state of mind of the speaker. Sometimes the prompt asks for the message to the audience. So you want to link it to that. Okay. And then the second part, that's a 1 point component. The second part is evidence and commentary. That's a 4 point component. Again, you want to make sure that you're using and identifying different types of diction and details. You're quoting the passage. I like to say, use nuggets from the passage to quote and analyze and tie them to the message, in this case, of Margaret Thatcher. And then you want to go as deep as possible with your analysis. Now, there's 2 types of structure for this, I think. You could sort of go line by line, sentence by sentence, and I call it point by point, and then shift your paragraph when you see a shift in Thatcher. Okay, and there's more than one shift, but I'm just kind of trying to simplify it for today. And then you could also go block format, which is sort of a paragraph about this, maybe tropes, a paragraph about this, maybe like syntax, and the paragraph about this, like maybe the word choice. But the thing is with that, you need to make sure that it flows. If it does not flow from one body paragraph to the next, if it's a little bit choppy, you may be limited in this 4 point component of the rubric to a 3. So just keep that in mind. The last point is the sophistication point. This one is pretty challenging, but the College Board has gotten a little bit more liberal with giving that out. It used to be maybe 8-9% would get the sophistication point, but I've been told by AP readers that that number is growing. So you can either earn that by your style, okay, if you look at point number 3, employing a style that is consistently vivid and persuasive, or you can earn that by how sophisticated your analysis is. Are you identifying shifts in the passage? Are you tying it into the deeper rhetorical situation of Margaret Thatcher's long-standing relationship with Ronald Reagan and what that meant to our 2 countries and what that meant to the world and what that meant as the Soviet Union fell and the Cold War finally ended. So the ramifications of that. So maybe easier said than done, but those are the components of the rubric. It is basically 1 plus 4 plus 1. That's the 6 you could get. Okay. If you do get 1 plus 3 plus 0, sorry, I can't type, and you get a 4, that's still a solid score. Okay. Students who score 3 4s are still looking very good for the exam. My goal for my students is for them to get 1 for the thesis, which I think is pretty easy to do, and to max out the evidence and commentary and try to get as close to the sophistication point as they can, but if they cannot, a 5 is excellent. And if you're scoring 5s on the FRQs, particularly the analysis, which is the lowest scoring of the 3, then you're looking very good for the overall exam. I hope this is helpful.